All right, being 5:15, I'd like to call the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
There are none.
So move to approve the agenda.
Second. We need to change the date on the it's not April 2nd, it's May 7th.
Yeah, there was a clerical error on item 2, so that's actually May 7th, but the right minutes. I did the agenda and Nicole sent out the right minutes, so the right minutes were attached. It was just wrong date. Sorry about that.
So a motion by Mike, second by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment?
Was that first one for the
Right,
for the adopting the agenda?
right now. We can do minutes.
Oh, sorry,
That's it.
my bad. I need approval for the we adopt the agenda. Okay, now I need approval for the May 7th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Made by Mike, second by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, public comment again? Move on to discussion for loan on Oshkosh Street paving and equipment purchase. Judy?
Okay, so I have been talking about the fact that when we went out to bid for the Oshkosh Street project, we had the sewer revenue bonds, and then we had a portion of that bonding that we were looking at to complete the road project that wasn't grant dollars. I think it was like $400,000, just about $400,000 that the city still owed for the portion that, again, wasn't covered by the grant. So I did my research on the bucket truck, and at the time, going out to bonding costs a lot of money. So I'll step back a little bit here. And Harriet Ellers says, if you don't have $1 million to go out to bonding for, then you can't look at going to market for the bonding. So then I sat on, what should we do moving forward? And so in the last couple of weeks, I've been visiting with Harriet Ellers and First State Bank about looking at some financing for these 2 projects that were remaining in the items that we had talked about bonding for. So I got a hold, like I said, I got a hold of First State Bank, and then there's one other thing in the equation, and that's we have a $2.4 million grant coming back, and we have a year that we need to sit on that grant because they're going to put the road down, and then they're going to wait for it to settle, and then they're going to put the top on the road. And there is a specific date that they have to be finished by. I think it's July of next year, and then we'll be able to put in for the grant and get our grant dollars back. So there's a lot of things going on, and how should we work this, and what are we thinking about? So again, I had the people that I called, and the state trust fund was what I visited with Harry about, because the reason we're looking at the state trust fund for both the bucket truck and the about $400,000 for the Oshkosh Street project is because I have more control. First of all, it doesn't cost us anything when we go to the state for money. They don't have any administrative fees, anything of that nature. So then I can control how many years are we gonna bond for these dollars or get a loan. This is actually a loan, not a bond. So then talking with Harry and looking at our current bond schedule, it made a lot of sense for the bucket truck for us to just get that paid for. Less interest. Let's try to hammer away at the bucket truck in 3 years, because again, I didn't bring my bond schedule, but I got 3 years of $100,000 less, and then the debt bumps up to $100,000 more dollars. So I have $100,000 over the next 3 years. So my thought process was, let's get rid of the the bucket truck. So then when we get to that 2027, no, it'll be 2029, we're back to even, and that one would be gone. So that's why I'm looking at 3 years for the bucket truck. And when I talked to Harry, the $386,000 for the Oshkosh Street project, and we calculated there's about a half a mile of road that is in the TID 4 district. So I said to him, does it make sense that we're able to charge that the rest of that bonding, 386,000 out of 206,000 or 206 million in percentage wise so all of this is playing into where we're going to go with this money. And he said, yeah, I would say that's a small enough percentage of the project itself that we could actually pay for this through TID increment. So then we talked about, I said, well, then he said, don't make that term too small. Don't push your revenue too hard, your increment too hard, that you'd end up short with increment and not be able to pay your bond. Then our other thought process was, because of the interest rate on it, if we end up bonding in the next 10 years for another road project, we just pay this off. So we would, because the state trust fund lets you pay in advance without any penalties at any time. So he's like, then we would go ahead at that time and see if it made sense, if the interest rate is at 5.5%, if the interest rate on our new bonding is less than this bonding, then we would just go ahead and pay that loan off and then earmark whatever dollar amounts were left, and then we would charge that to the TID district again. So this is not tax levy dollars, the 386, it's actually increment dollars. About 126,000, so I have $80,000 to work with because part of it is contractual. So we should be in very good shape over a 10-year term to be able to pay for that and not have to worry about having to put it on the tax roll. So that's where we're sitting with these. This is actually just the loan application itself. So I didn't actually submit these yet. I just wanted to talk to you guys about what I was thinking. And then if you approve the thought process, then I'll go ahead and submit these to the state. I didn't want to submit them. If the state gets these, they put the money aside. So they're like, don't submit them and then not know exactly, not be for sure that you're going to get the money, because as soon as we get them, we put them aside. And then we earmark those dollars for the city of New London. And then next month, I'd come back with the resolution. The state sends me that information. I gotta send them this, they send me the resolution. And then you would approve those dollars next month, actually. The application itself, I don't think it's important that you actually approve it. If you want to do a motion for it, you can. But I just wanted to talk you through that. Now, there's another part of this is that we have a $2.4 million grant coming in a year. 2.1 million grant coming in this year. And I talked to Robert and I said, how much of that are we not going to pay out this year? How much of that is just that math that's going to go over the top? So it's about 200,000. So then we're talking, $1.9 million. And I think we should use our unassigned fund balance, because we've always talked about that's why we carry unassigned fund balance, so that we're borrowing from ourselves instead of borrowing from anyone else. So we have about look at unassigned fund balance, we're at about $3 million. And then if you look at the retirement reserves that we have set aside for sick leave, we're at about $4 million. So I think we'll be safe. The other thing that I did is when I talked to First State Bank, I said to them, I might need a lifeline. So I let them know what I was doing. I explained everything to them, what's going on with Oshkosh Street, about the state trust fund. I also asked them about interest rates, and they said they could not beat the state trust fund, plus they'd have administrative fees. So they also agreed that that was a good avenue to take out the money for the road project and the piece of equipment. But I do have a lifeline with the First State Bank in case we get to a point. Now I know when most, all of our big dollars come in. So I know right now we sit in a tight world until we have our tax money collected in August. But I know right now, in one of our funds, we're sitting at $2.5 million. So over the next 2 months, I wouldn't expect we can run $1 million in our monthly bills. So, I think we'll be safe until then. Then we, again, in November, we'll see our shared revenues run about $3 million. So then between then and then, So then again in February, so between November and February isn't too bad, but then when we hit February to when we get our money back. So I know specific times of where I'll be keeping a really good eye on where we're at. I also have a fund, our wastewater treatment plan is also in really good financial position. So I could always utilize some of those dollars if I need it. So again, I visit with the First State Bank. I think this is the option we should choose. Should not cost us anything. And if we need a lifeline, it's not going to be $2 million. So I don't want to go out for $2 million and here we sit on $2 million. The other thing I wanted to look at is interest. Now we have in our budget a designated amount of interest we're expecting this year in order to pay for things that we put in our budget. We're over, I think we're at almost 60%. So we will have zero issue collecting what we need in order to fill the obligations in that 2025 budget for the interest money. That all makes any sense. Any questions?
Why are we scrambling? What happened? Why aren't we prepared? It seems like this is.
We're not scrambling. One of the things, we've been talking about this since we went out for the sewer fund. I'm the one who's been kind of putting it on the background or in the back area. And then Robert said to me, Judy, when are you going to start looking at the money so that they have a bucket truck they found with a really good price tag on it. And so he's kind of been nudging me like, when are you going to get that money in so I can tell them that we're going to get that bucket truck. So it's time for me to start. It was time for me to start putting together this other side. But I think I've been coming in the last 4 months talking about that we're going to have some other debt that we have to, decide to get. And actually, the longer we wait, the less interest we're paying. So, but I think at this point, it is a time where we actually need to pull the trigger on getting the dollars and fulfilling our commitment to the project. And we have to take out the money in order to finish our project on Oshkosh Street. And it's TID dollars.
And one of the timing aspect of all this was that we have this $2.1 million grant for Oshkosh, which is huge. But timing, we can only submit one reimbursement. So we have to wait till the project is done before we ask for that $2.1 million. Now we could finish the project this year and request that $2.1 million. But Robert and the engineers felt since it's such an invasive project, ideally we'd want to wait and let it sit over the winter. So just put the binder layer down, let it settle. And the better product would be to come back in the spring and put the top mat, like Judy said, the top surface layer. Well, we can't ask for the money until the project is done. So if we would put the surface layer on this year, we could ask for that $2 million and that'd be a totally different scenario what we got going on. But for a better product, we want to wait till next year to put the top surface mat on, but we can't request that money, the $2.1 million, until after that surface mat's on. So it's a timing thing as well.
I just feel like we're building a house and we're taking out a vehicle loan to pay the builder.
Well, that's why Judy said, let's use our own money for the most part and minimize.
Right, so the $2.1 million, we're not going to take a loan out for. We're going to borrow from ourselves. It's like if you go to your savings account, if you had enough money sitting in your savings account to pay for a building, building your house, and then, that didn't make any sense. Can I give an example? So we have enough money sitting in the bank that we can borrow from ourselves in order to, so that we don't have to go out to pay any more interest on those dollars, and just fund it ourselves until next year when we get those dollars back from the state of Wisconsin. Unless you want me to go out for $2 million, these are our two options. I can go out to loan for $2.1 million and we can take those dollars in, and then we for sure will have enough money to pay all the bills that are coming in right now. So I guess that's part of why we're in a hurry to get our $400,000 too, is because we are currently paying those bills as fast as you look at Oshkosh Street, that project is moving along very swiftly. And we're seeing some very large bills come in. So we need to make sure that we're getting our $500,000 to help pay for that project. Because like I said, all but $200,000 of that project will probably be done in what, the next couple months? Oshkosh Street, they're really moving along over there.
A lot
So-
of ways by my house.
So, in
Taking a lot
essence,
of
we're,
ways by my house.
instead of paying 5% interest on that $2.5 million, we're borrowing it from ourselves. Yes, we will not get interest on those dollars because we're utilizing them to pay for the project. But because we already have about 60% in our interest collection, I don't see that we're gonna be short currently for our budget to be able to fill the obligation to our 2025 budget with those dollars. I feel like I'm not making any sense to you.
I guess it makes sense if the road is gonna be sturdier,
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's gonna be.
Oh,
you've got
yeah,
someone who
we're
does
not.
public work, so
Sit
I mean, John could
Over,
confirm that.
over the winter to settle.
you know,
with the
So I
final
think
road
the
on
theory,
top.
theory behind that is, Tim, is, when you do this invasive project, you're probably gonna have some settling somewhere. And if you put that finish mat on right away, then that's gonna reflect through the finish. Or if you just put the binder and you have say you do have a rough section. I mean, if they do it right, you shouldn't get much,
Mhm.
but there's always that possibility. Then it can be fixed before you put the final mat on, so it doesn't, show like
Is
you
that
have.
something new that they've been doing? Cause I mean, we didn't do that downtown.
Mhm. We
dug
did
it
do
all
that downtown. Yeah, we did.
Used to, to
That's
used to.
something they
put
should have been
roads in.
doing, but they didn't.
But the
Let 'em sit
stipulation,
here.
Yep,
but the stipulation
And
on
better
that
roads.
grant was we could submit and get money back throughout the project. This grant has it's a different grant actually too.
Well, actually,
It's the other-
Yeah, downtown was the DOT's project, so. we
Oh,
were paying
yeah,
them.
so we didn't even have, right,
We were just getting
so
billed.
they only billed us
Yeah.
20%, 10%.
But doing projects that are that invasive, like John was saying, when you got stuff that's going down that, I mean, he's 14 feet plus down in some
Yep.
areas. I mean, that's pretty invasive. So I mean, to allow it to go through a winter cycle to settle, it's a little bit of insurance that when you come back in the spring, you can put the top mat on and you've got that settling already done.
cause most projects of this size. I know for us in Appleton, we will do the underground this year and leave it just set a whole year. And then do the pave and curb and gutter next year.
So there is sewer and water. So this is just the road part of that project. There is another, whole nother part that's being $1 million that's being put in the ground in the sewer side. And then the water also spent, I have to believe, $500,000, something of that nature in that project too. So it's just a very expensive, lot of dollars going into that road.
So I apologize, that was a lot, and just trying to process it all. So you're asking for. One more time, go through what your ask is this year, and then next year you're gonna pay the $2.1 million.
So, no, so the ask is that we,
I'm saying the
Go.
grant will pay it next year.
Yes,
correct, they're gonna pay us
Pay us
back our money.
Okay.
So we're gonna go into unassigned fund balance. We have $3 million sitting in unassigned fund balance. Do you wanna pull up unassigned? You did at one point.
I had it.
So my thought process is instead of going out to debt in the short term between when we're paying these dollars out, is we have $3.2 million sitting in assigned fund balance. And then if you go up to our reserve fund for retirement, we have another $800,000. So get about $4 million that we're sitting on. And we could use those dollars in the interim and drill down on our unassigned fund balance. And I did have both a conversation with Ellers and our auditor. And we will not be going out to bond, and I guess that's the other thing that I had a conversation. We won't be going out to bond in between. So sometimes you really worry about doing that to a community, because then I have to explain that. Why is your unassigned fund balance at, 600,000 when last year it was at 2 million? What did you do with those dollars? If it's explainable, they're not gonna get too excited about it, but they're gonna get excited that you're sitting at 600,000, but 2.6 million. So we'd borrow from ourselves in the interim between, when that project gets finished late summer until late summer next year for about a year. And then, so we're gonna pull the money out of here and then we're gonna fill it back up when the state gives us our money back. So I'm not asking for any money for
So-
the 2.1 million. I'm just asking if you are comfortable with us drilling down on our reserves in order to pay, or, yeah, we'll be paying those bills in between.
So what was the ask about the short-term borrowing from the state?
Yep, so we have two pieces of, two instruments with the state, two loans. One of them is $214,000. And that's for the Department of Works bucket truck. And I'm asking that we go out 3 years for this loan. It's at 5.5%. And the reason for that is because over the next 2 years, our debt actually drops $100,000. So we'd be able to fit this within our current debt structure and not have to increase our debt to the taxpayer for the next 3 years. Get it, hit it hard, get it off the books. So that when we go back out to debt, because I don't think we're gonna be doing that in the next 3 years. We have a number of projects we're talking about. I know Department of Public Works is going through and updating a lot of those projects today. And we're gonna decide or look at, some other grant funding to see where we sit when it comes to the downtown projects and other projects. So then we'll decide what our next bonding is. But then when I had a conversation with Robert and Chad about that, it doesn't look like in the next 3 years that we're going to be going out for bonding, possibly the year after, but not in the next 3 years. But again, we're working through what that's gonna look like and what those projects are. I couldn't tell you today what that's gonna look like, but we're talking about it. And Department of Public Works is ultimately in charge of what that's gonna look like. I just work with how are we gonna pay for it once that's determined. So I think it's smart that, again, we hit this bucket truck pretty hard, paid off in 3 years, then we'll be at level debt service or levy, I should call it, until we hit that next year, and then it bumps back up automatically. So by then you hope that a lot of things happen. We're gonna go through a reval, we're gonna have more assessed value within a city, all kinds of things happen in a 3-year period. We will reevaluate at that time when we're looking at another debt service. Okay, so that'll happen down the road after this is paid for. Now, the other one,
Before we move to the other one, the bucket truck, we had already approved the purchase of a bucket truck, correct?
correct, that was done in capital projects.
In capital
and we
projects.
Talked about bonding for it, and it was also part of our bonding, I think, at the sewer. We
Yeah,
were talking
okay.
about going out to bonding, it was on our list.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that that was the same thing that I was thinking about, that it was the bucket truck that we were going to bond for. Now we're gonna pull it off of that bonding item it won't come out of the bonding funds now, it'll come out of this loan.
Out of this trust loan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Still debt, just a different.
Different bucket.
No pun intended.
Alright.
There wasn't, but that's funny.
Okay, and then we have the Oshkosh Street paving. So $2.1 million of this is funded by the grant. The rest we have to pay for. This is our portion besides the sewer portion of it that we paid through that bonding, okay? So this is the 386,000. This is TID 4. This revenue to pay for this bonding will come out of the increment that we're getting from the Retzlaff apartment complex out there or any of those residential lots that he has back there. I'm not sure where they're at. So that will come from the additional dollars within that increment to pay for the 386,000. The reason we're going out 10 years is because when I was visiting with Harry from Ellers, he said, don't cut yourself too short when it comes to increment in case, so that, because we have other commitments for that increment. We both looked at the increment today. We looked at the value is going to probably go up again in our next year's increment will go up again. So this gives us plenty of room in case there's other projects. I know Chad is looking at other things within that TID area. So it gives us enough room to pay for this and then have some wiggle room in case there's some other projects that pop up within that TID district. So, and then, and this is also at 5.5%, and we would do this one for 10 years. Then if this, when we go to bond again, 4 years from now, what we would look at is, what does that interest rate look like today? And what does this one look like? If this is high compared to what we can go to bond for, we'll probably pay this one off. So, but it would still get paid through the increment, but we would just do it obviously to save interest dollars on that, on the revenue gained from the TID district.
And we had also, this money was also approved in our bonding when we had talked before, correct?
Actually, we're gonna be approving both of these purchases through a resolution at the next finance meeting. I just
Correct,
want,
but when we had talked about our portion of the Oshkosh Street paving, we had set that money in the bonding.
correct.
So
So
then-
then both of these were talked about within that bonding, and then Harry said, if it isn't $1 million,
Okay,
there's no economies of scale here.
okay,
So you have to, we have to go out and figure something else out.
okay, thank you.
So we ended up not bonding because of that.
All right.
So I'd like to thank you all for the extra questions and stuff. That really helped understand a lot more. I'm on board with it. It sounds like a great plan and you put a lot of thought towards it. Given our last meeting about the wastewater treatment facility in the next few years, where does that put us if we go forward with this? Where does it put us with planning for that?
This does not affect that at all.
Okay.
So when you look at the city, we call this geo debt. So anything besides the plant itself is called general obligation debt. So we have a limit on the general obligation debt. When you look at the wastewater treatment plant, what we just took out was called revenue debt. So revenue debt means the stream of revenue from the plant itself pays for this debt, not the taxpayers' dollars over here on the general obligation debt. So the guarantee for this debt payment is the revenue generated by the bills that go out to the
Sewer
taxpayers.
user fees.
Sewer user fees. Thank you.
Has there ever
No,
been
they
any,
don't, they're two different thought processes.
has there ever been any thought in the money we have in unassigned fund balance, a couple $1 million, putting that in short-term CDs, or is that not?
Oh, no, we're getting pretty good.
Because you're gonna get 5% on CDs, or we're getting 5%, and there's 6 and 7 month CDs out there. So you put $1 million in there, you're talking, some serious money. I just wonder if there's ever been any thought to that.
Well, we do actually get pretty good money on our liquid debt over at First. They're really generous with us. So it hits 4.5%, 5%. But also remember, we're not always at 2 million. We do this. So we're up and down and up and down. So we could do a CD for 3 months and all of a sudden be like, I need that money. So you really have to think, through that. And then I don't know how quickly that road's gonna get done. So all of a sudden I throw something in a 3-month CD and I get $1 million bill and I'm like, oh, my money's in a 3-month CD. Oh, can I pay in 3 months? That it's very difficult to find that kind of pattern within governmental funding because it's so spread out. And then our billing is never the same from year to year. So you can look at the history and it doesn't matter. It's like this. So, but I feel like we're getting, if you look at our current interest that we collected, we're at 50-some thousand dollars, I think. Let me go back to. Oops.
Sorry.
Yep, 76,000. So that's 4 months. So I think we're doing okay.
Okay. I just was curious because that money's sitting there, you might as well
Yep.
use it.
And also, we're not, our big investments, I don't book until the end of the year. So, a lot of times this will double or triple once I do my year-end adjustments. So, yeah, this is not all of the investment tools in here. Okay,
So we have no plans on going out to bond anytime soon.
So when Chad and what I could tell you is preliminarily when Chad and I visited, and that's part of how I put this together, because I visited with both of them. what are our plans for, we know we want to look at Pearl Street. That is one that we've been constantly talking about to upgrade what Pearl Street looks like. And there's grant dollars, so the grant dollars will dictate what that looks like. So I think Chad understands that more than I do. It's like 5 years or,
Yeah, the STP urban, like we got for North Water Street, you apply for it. If you're awarded, it becomes a DOT project and they've got a 5-year window and they plug you in where they want to based on their other projects throughout the year. So that might dictate, the timing if and when we have to bond. Moving forward, in the next year or two is, one of the bigger projects on our sites is Mill Street. We have to look at infrastructure because the county wants to work on the road, which is Highway T. So Mill Street and Beacon, in Outagamie County. So they want to look at that. So we need to look at least the year beforehand, the utility work, which that would be on the utility side, whether we got to do some bonding or if we can do that all with the revenue that we have in our reserve funds, things like that to be determined. But for our major street reconstruction project, it's going to be several years off yet. I mean, we got big projects coming up, but the need to bond for big projects is going to be a couple of years out yet.
It seemed like in the past, we were bonding like every other year. And it was like, I remember seeing like 2026, 2028 on that schedule.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now that's scrap, we're going in a different
we
direction.
did have 2027 earmarked for Pearl Street, but for Pearl Street. Yep, but we're, again, we have to wait to see where that grant dictates us to.
Now, if you don't want to do the grant and you just want to bond for it 100% on your own
And
and not the grant money, then yeah.
Well, I know we promised the
So
people of
then
this town that we were gonna fix our roads, and I just thought that was the plan, so.
Well, and I think we've been doing a heck of a job in the last couple of years. I mean, I've got that website that indicates how much money we've spent in the last 5-7 years and how much we've been doing. We got to recharge a little bit too. There's amount,
Yeah.
we've been pounding it for the last how many years. We don't want to stop. Yes, we want to keep that commitment going, but we can't keep up to that pace with staffing and financially is what we've been doing, most recently. So.
And we have been I have been hearing complaints about we're doing all the things all right now. Nobody can get anywhere. So, as much as everybody wants the roads fixed, they're also not very interested in the inconvenience. It's been a lot. Oshkosh Street has been very inconvenient for many more people. It's a bigger project than the downtown was. And people are really feeling it, and I'm hearing the complaints.
And even next year, even though it's not our project, you're gonna see Highway 45 and then what's 54 called? 54's got a local road name too, but 54 throughout the town as well. So you're gonna see a major street project. And next year, it's not technically ours, but people are still gonna see more road reconstruction going on even next year.
Within New London.
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, as much as they want it,
And you have to balance all aspects. I mean,
Yeah.
If you put something on the back burner, it's gonna end up just like our streets. They haven't been touched in years. And then we're sitting here trying to fix all of them, which again, like Chad said, we're doing a great job at that. We're doing a lot. But other stuff isn't getting done and you have to make that balance.
I'm just gonna take a plug as long as I had the opportunity. 'Cause
Have we financed any vehicles in the last, say 5 years? I feel like we've always paid that with capital projects.
We have, but we had 2 very large pieces of equipment this year that popped up, and when you bond for them, I think these are 15-year pieces of equipment, if I remember right.
Yeah, you can't bond for the short-term equipment.
Right, so when I do, when I do the geodet with Ellers, that stuff can't go on there, because it doesn't last long enough. So the only way that you're able to do those short-term ones is to debt like this, but we just didn't have enough money within our capital. It was one of the items. It was the only item actually in our capital projects that we couldn't fund completely with cash, but I feel like hammering this at 3 years is a good alternative. I'm getting it into that debt structure where I feel it will fit really nice right now. And that doesn't always happen. And then we can, refocus in 3 years and see where we're at. I think that's a good plan. And then in between, Department of Public Works can get back to, thinking, strategizing where they're gonna go with all of the things that they have to do and the road projects.
I just
So,
feel like with loans, a vehicle loan compared to a street project, wouldn't you think we'd be different interest rates? I wouldn't think it'd be the same.
No, with the state of Wisconsin, it's all the same. Yep, doesn't matter what it is.
So Chad or Judy, that $2.1 million bond,
Bond or grant?
the grant, sorry about that,
Yeah.
2.1 million grant.
Yep.
Are we ever at risk of waiting too long to take that money, or what is our end game? That, is there a deadline that?
Mhm.
Is that July that you said about next year?
I'd have to look, there's a SMA, state municipal agreement, we signed that, and we've got a window of how many years to get it done. So I'd have to go back to that state municipal agreement. We're within that window.
Well, I just
We're
want
not
to make
worried
sure
about
that it was never at risk,
No.
waiting for that year to settle or 6 months to settle it. If that money would ever become in
No, we would
jeopardy.
make sure this. If it expires at the end of this year, we would not be doing our plan to let the road settle and do the pavement next year. Robert's been on that a little bit more than I have lately, but I can go back to that state municipal agreement and look at the deadline. I want to say it was like 2027 off the top of my head.
I just want to make sure that it didn't come up, that somebody asked that question of, are we in jeopardy of losing it because we're postponing the end product?
Keep talking, I'll find it.
Is there any issues with having a base coat on there with snow plowing and stuff over the winter?
There is somewhat some issues, so all your manholes are probably gonna be up dead 1.5 inches, 2 inches, and they usually just ramp them up. They'll go through and pave that binder down, and then they'll come back and just put another little surface on top around the manhole. So it'll go up and over. It won't really affect a lot. It's gonna be some bumps and roughness. But I
I'd
guess,
imagine just like Main Street that everybody went through. I mean, you could tell it was weavy, it didn't look all straight, it wasn't appealing to the eye.
It'll just match the rest of the streets in town.
I think it'll still look better.
it happens enough.
With the manhole covers in the street the same height this time?
Mhm.
If you plan them right, when they finish, they'll be.
Hopefully. I mean, realistically, you're talking 1.5 inches, so it's not like it's gonna be a hump like this.
Well, I guess, I mean, if we're not going out to bond and it's whatever, I mean, you want the street to be a good street, I guess this is the way to go. Thank you for explaining it.
I'm not really the street expert though.
I don't think
For
nobody is.
financing
I don't
it.
think nobody is.
There you go.
Instead of going out to. bond
Robert
for
will be
money
by the
that we
time
can-
this is
Right.
over.
Exactly,
Then
exactly.
you still
he's
get,
really good.
you still get something.
I got you.
I'm trying to save us interest.
There's always a guessing game, no matter how you look at
Here you go, John. The sunset date for this project with Oshkosh Street, we have to be done by June 30th, 2027.
it. Perfect,
So plenty of time.
perfect. Thanks for looking that up.
And I know there's in their contract, they have some drop dead date next year. I
Yeah,
think it's
it-
July 1, but
For the
I'm not-
contractor contract.
Yeah,
there's a set date.
Yeah, that's
For
totally
the
different.
grant,
Yeah.
2027.
So,
Thank you.
I don't know. Chad, do you want these approved as we move forward? And
Just some direction for Judy to send in the applications. Like Judy said, the official is not till next month. You can see the resolution. That's the official. This is just the preliminary thought, just with everything. You guys heard how there's a lot to this. So it was good to have this in a month in advance for the questions to be asked and some to chew on it a little bit. But if you want to give direction to Judy to apply these applications to, for these loans, next month, the resolutions will come through making it official.
I just didn't want to dump the resolutions on you at the, and then try to. Gives you a little time, gives you another month.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking so much time to explain all the buckets, all the different moving parts we've got going on.
And
Must be good at checkers, huh? For moving you guys around.
We can move on then, Chad? Or do you need something?
Yeah, probably making a motion to direct Judy to send in these applications for the short-term loan financing probably would be a good thing.
I'll make a motion to direct Judy to start the financing for Oshkosh Street paving and equipment purchase for a bucket truck.
Right.
A motion made by me, seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to the finance director monthly financial reports. Judy?
All right, so, like I mentioned earlier, we're at about a third of the way through the year. We're in, it's time to go. So we're in April, 33.5%. Or 33.33, I guess, in a percentage. And if you take a look at this, the same ones are sticking out as they did last month, and that would be insurance because we pay that all at the beginning of the year. And then debt service, because most of our debt service is paid. So when I was doing my analysis too, that's one of the things I was looking at. Because as you can see, that's a big number too. So you can see almost 80%. And then I just made another debt service payment the other day, so you're gonna see that go up once we hit this month and next month, the May month-to-month comparison. So we pay most of that debt, and then our ambulance is paid quarterly, so that's why that one's a little bit higher. But otherwise, everything is looking in order. Equipment maintenance is starting to settle down a little bit even, so I was glad to see that. Any questions on any of the expenditures today? All right, then we'll move on to revenues. Thank you. And you can see that we have collected about 74%. We'll collect this other $1 million coming up here. 15th of August is when it's due in our office. So that will be collecting in August. Here's our state shared revenue. You can see it sits at 2.6 million that we collected in November. So a lot of our big revenues are collected at specific times throughout the year. So definitely be keeping an eye on that as we go through the next year and making sure that we're able to make ends meet as the monthly comes in. But again, I don't see any reason why we won't collect everything that we have anticipated. And we are running, you know, at 75,000 here in interest. And anything else I just don't see at this time that I would expect at this time that we receive all the revenues that we anticipated. Any questions on any of those? All right. Then we got assigned and unassigned fund balance. And currently there are no changes in this assigned and unassigned fund balance. We're still at the same dollar amount as last month. So if anyone has any questions on any of these, I can take them. Otherwise, our audit should be coming in actually here in the next month or so. So actually next month. I'm hoping that they present at our next month finance committee. If not next month, the month after. So then we'll get a new estimate of our unassigned fund balance at that time. So any questions on any of these? And then we have wheel tax. Currently using some of those dollars for House and Alcon Road engineering. I think he's at the end of that one. He had said we have some of those dollars in bonding also. So we'll be flipping over to bonding. And then we have a couple, we're gonna use this also for the North Street project, so you'll be seeing that come out, when they start working on that. Otherwise, that's that. And then here's the bonding. We have the senior center HVA system that's coming out in here, and then the house Elton, and then the library donation, which is also still sitting, with us. Any questions on any of that? All right, then I'll move into my monthly report. All right, so I did the annual financial report. That was completed. I needed to send that into the state of Wisconsin by May 15th, the deadline. A lot of repercussions. If this doesn't get into the state on time, we would lose our shared revenue and our highway aid. So this is really important. I call it the city's tax return. So we're reporting our revenues and expenditures to the state of Wisconsin. Continue to work with our auditors to complete the audit. I still have to do the first, I don't know, 10, 15-ish pages of that once they get me the preliminary audit, so I'll be working on that yet. So the plan is for them to present in July or August meeting. Completing all the final paperwork and audit for the joint review board. I have sent the joint review board dates, and that is next Thursday. So I'm finishing all the annual reports 4, 5, 6, 7 doesn't have an annual report. That will be next year. So I'm gonna do an update to the committee just so they know where things at, but finishing all that annual stuff, actually just working on that this week and getting that ready for those meetings. I finished the wastewater treatment plant, also has an annual financial portion of the replacement fund. He talked about that at the meeting. I do a portion of that report that is submitted to the state. Maintenance of effort, which I have to provide also to the state of Wisconsin, population over 20,000 for both the fire department and our EMS ambulance. Those were submitted to the state of Wisconsin. Also can lose funding if you don't get these in or comply with their Act 12 laws. Finish the final steps for the revenue bonding for Oshkosh Street. So we received those dollars, and we have to actually, let people know that the dollars are in the bank and communicate. So there's a final step process to all of that. I had an in-person civic meeting. Also filling in as we have an open position. Our HR payroll position has been open for a while. And we have a lot going on in that office with a lot of new hires, a lot of kiddos coming in, which is great. Recreation department's filling up and pools filling up, so it's good to see. So a lot of stuff going on in there. And so we actually have filled this position, just so everyone knows. And she will be starting on Monday, the 16th. I think that's right. So I'm excited to say that we have someone hired and will be coming into our office on the 16th. So then we'll go through a big training process with that individual. So let's see. Met and discussed, obviously did a lot of homework about the Oshkosh Street and the TID portion of the borrowing for that and the piece of equipment. So I think that's it. Anyone have any other questions of me or?
I just wanted to double back to, you were talking about the different basically the different buckets. When talking about the wastewater treatment plant and that project that is looming and an absolute necessity for us, and we're going to have to start talking those numbers. You had just said here that that all becomes a ratepayer. That's a whole different, it's not even a different bucket. It's a whole different, we're in a different time zone now. Okay.
Let's go with this and then the rest of the stuff. Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm real interested to see where the federal grant funding comes in. So we qualify, looks like, for some of that stuff. So I'm praying that those don't go away before the project is started, but, you know, and the short timeline of everything. So there's just a lot to think about. So you guys are gonna have a lot to, you know, make a decision about. But you're probably right, that it's probably not if, but, you know, when, or if, but what. you know, you're gonna
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
with that plant, and, yep, it's a lot to absorb, and
so that's not a quote unquote taxpayer, it's a ratepayer. So the ratepayers are gonna have input. We're gonna be needing to do the public input with ratepayers.
they're gonna be
Okay,
working.
thank you.
Yeah, they'll be working on all of that information out to the taxpayers about, ratepayers about, what's going on over there and the upgrade. So,
Okay,
Even though the waste treatment center is separate from the city as far as financing, are you still assisting them? Are you guys still in talks with them? Is there any relationship with the, are you helping them with any of these discussions or
Utilities
will-
or treatment plant?
the treatment center?
Yep, so yes, financially, yes.
Okay.
Making a decision about what happens over there? No. Because I don't
Even
think
though it's
about
a
wastewater
separate-
treatment plants, so, right, but when it comes to the financing, then I would be the, yes, you know, Chad and I would work, it works a lot like, well, the revenue bonding we just did. So we'll go through all of that, but there's just so many other players involved. When you go through that presentation was an absolutely beautiful presentation about what's going on over there. He did just a bang up job of bringing that down to layman's terms, I thought, anyway. But there's a lot of players in the financial part of that right now, and some really good players. I'm hoping that are going to be available when that project starts. But yeah, that I would definitely be part of a lot of those conversations.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of relationship that is with you and them.
Yeah, even though it's different budget, it's still run by
Yeah.
the city. You know, just think of it as it's in a different budget. Robert still is involved, I'm still involved, Julie's still involved, we still operate that service, totally different budget.
and we still vote on what ultimately
Yep,
happens.
goes to Board of Public Works Committee for the decision.
So somebody had asked me about, would that need to go out for a referendum? And I don't know, I'm thinking no, because it's ratepayer, but I don't know for sure.
Correct.
Okay,
There's not a taxing effect at all. It's strictly rate players.
okay, thank you for that. I didn't know the answer. I'll get back to them.
And then I heard some stuff about the Park and Rec having hard times finding people to work for the Park and Rec. Is that something?
They were going through the process. Ginger just told me this morning that she should have her second mower. We usually try to get retirees as the mowers because seasonal kids, they can't start until like June and they gotta leave in August, and we have to mow earlier and later than that, so we're trying to get the mower. She had one, and I think they just hired the second one. They were struggling a little bit to try to find the right person for that. The seasonals should be coming online now, which is nice. We haven't had them, so that hopefully our workforce will pick up a little bit, but ahead of this, I mean, we were using full-time guys in mow lawn, which is not ideal. We should have them do other things, technical things, which is better, so trying to get ourselves back in the move, but yeah, hopefully we're getting, in the next couple of weeks, we should be getting closer to our normal full staff for the Parks and Rec.
So there's no issues in the Park and Rec right now as far as staffing, like the wages aren't too low or anything like that? Cause I know I kind of went on the website and I was like, well, I wouldn't do that for that.
No.
So I just know that, we did a wage scale not too long ago. It seemed like the top got a lot and the bottom got little. So I didn't know if we wanted to reapproach that or whatever.
And we do the
When you work at the
seasonals-
pool for like $8 an hour or whatever, I don't know who's gonna do that.
We do the
so.
seasonal separate
Mhm.
than the full-time staff, so
Okay.
Ginger and Morgan, they
Kinda
do
works, yeah.
the evaluation and they work on that one. They talk to all the Park and Rec, departments and see where everybody's at, but.
Okay.
I've got one more thing okay, so just kind of on the library project, I was involved in the pre-construction meeting yesterday, just to let everybody know that they plan on starting demo on June 9th. So in the next week or so, they're gonna be starting some activity over there, which is positive. And then everybody should got an email or a notification from the library board or the committee. They're gonna do their groundbreaking I don't know if it's gonna be sledgehammers, I don't know what they're doing for sure, but the groundbreaking event, June 10th at 5:30, and you're all invited to that. So I got.
Any other questions? If not, we'll go to motion to adjourn.
Second.
Made by Mike, second by Tim.